Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Q&A with Whitey. That's me. I hope you're ready to enjoy what will be a great conversation this morning. Make sure you got your cup of coffee ready. I have. You can see my wife got into that, the grumpy old man mug again. And morning tea this morning is Belgium chocolate cake. This one's going to have to go back to the keeper, I think. I'm on a health kick. I've lost 3 kilos. I'm exercising like you wouldn't believe. I've got another 3 kilos to go. My blood sugar levels haven't been this good in at least a year and a half. The Royal Commission for me, with the stresses that brought, really knocked my health around. So I'm back on the mission. I'm back on the treadmill, getting into it, and weight's coming off. Another 3 kilos to go, and no chocolate cake. What a bummer. Anyhow, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We're going to have a great conversation with our special guest. But before we get to that, I do wish to thank our sponsors who corporately support us and have done right through the COVID period. No one's left us, and we're very much appreciative of their support. It's enabled us to bring things like this to you free of charge. And same with all our face-to-face get-togethers. Whenever we do our PD days, and different at the moment, but normally in face-to-face mode, they're all free. Thanks to people like this. So that's ALI, Bluestone, Finsure, Prosper, Lens, Suncorp, Pepper Money, Deposit Power, AAMC, Strive Financial, Insurance Advisor Net for all your PI, On Deck, Trouble Loans and Credit Fix Solutions. Thanks, guys, so much for your support. It's wonderful and we love you for it. All right, let's get on to today's conversation. You're going to love today. My special guest today, Simon Bednar, who's the General Manager from Finsure. Simon, welcome. How are you going, mate?
Yeah, good. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you and we can see you.
Excellent.
Thanks, mate. Welcome to Q&A with Whitey, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation because part of this isn't about plugging an aggregator as such. I mean, there's a bit of that. Hey, that's life. But it's about understanding you as a person and an individual, because I think we sort of hear names in the marketplace and see things, but we don't get to know the person themselves. And I was a little bit that way with the interaction you and I have had for over many years. But I want to share one little thing, and I promise you I won't go too far with this sharing. He knows where I'm going. I just want everybody to understand this man sitting in front of the camera today is one of the most wonderful men I've ever met, with such a big heart, great compassion for his fellow human beings, but also for his industry. And I'm going to be honest with you, buddy, I didn't know some of the things about it, but last year Simon and I wound up in Munich together. We're on our way to a study tour, and Simon took a whole day out of his itinerary to show me around Munich, the highlights, the history. We went over to that concentration camp. I've lost the name of it just at the last minute.
Yeah, Dachau.
And showed me around there. It was just the most magical experience for me. I'd never been anywhere like that. And the time we shared together there, mate, has actually left an all-time lasting impression on me. And the greatest gratitude and a mate's love for you as a person. And I just want to share that with everybody, because we see a lot of figures in our industry. We sort of put them up there a little bit and say, but these are beautiful people. It's important to me that people see that. So I hope you don't mind me sharing, but you're a wonderful, wonderful man. And it is a time in my life that I will never forget, I promise you. And we continue on. So besides that little piece, to get the ball rolling, I think what we should do is, so that people understand a little bit more about you, is give us a little bit about your background. Tell us your journey to being where you are today, because obviously you weren't with Finsure for the last 30 years. Tell us your background a little bit, and also maybe share us a little bit what you do to relax. So give us a bit of the Simon Bednar story.
All right. So I guess by way of my background, I am a qualified mechanical engineer.
Oh.
I qualified from Melbourne Uni in the late 90s, and went to work in Malaysia on the latex machines for Ansell in the glove department. So I spent a number of years over there, a number of months actually, before it just got too much for me. Came back and actually ended up having a stint with Deloitte Consulting as a management consultant, and was there for the Y2K boom crash, and then ended up working with a good friend of mine who ran Stargate, Brett Spencer. So that was my first foray into finance in the IT space, and started off as a BA and working with the team there and project managing Symmetry, which was a CRM system in the network for a number of years. And in 2009, I decided that I needed a challenge, so I quit the job and started up my own business in executive headhunting, having never made a cold call in my life, never having done real cold-facing sales. It had all been corporate sales, and sat in front of a phone in an office that I was renting in the suburb of Melbourne, and looked at the phone for probably close to 4 months, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then finally got the nerve to pick the phone up and start making phone calls, and started placing brokers. And as a result of that, I'd met John Calenda probably 7 or 8 years ago in 2003 when we helped him when he left his previous Aussie and set up X Inc. And he said to me, come across and start recruiting brokers for Finsure in the very, very beginning. So Finsure started in October 2011, and we started recruiting brokers probably in April that year, just before it incorporated. Excellent. And it started with me, Finsure started with me in my bedroom or my home office, making phone calls, not knowing what I was doing. And then this is a funny story, moving to an office at the back of a coffee shop, not having enough cash to really have an office in our own right or a whiteboard. I used to write the names of the brokers I spoke to on the window. And I used to use the main phone line for the coffee shop to make the phone calls to leave messages for brokers. And when they called back, if I didn't pick the phone up in the first 2 rings, it went to the switch, and the switch picked up and said, hello, Veneziano Coffee. And of course, the broker went and hung up. So that's how we started, and that was my journey, really. It was probably coming up to 20 years, effectively, just under 20 years in the finance industry.
How funny is that, writing names and details on a window? Today, people pay a lot of money to write on glass as a whiteboard. You started something there.
Yeah, well, we had a few people who turned up and were wondering where in the early days, wondering where the stationery cupboard was when they started. They came from the big banks. And I said, mate, window, and here's a whiteboard marker.
Yeah, go for it.
So it's an interesting story, because considering where we are today. And then I guess to relax, I'm probably sharing a little bit too much here in the sense that I like to paint, and I paint miniatures, which is a little bit geeky, but for those tabletop games, I brew beer. I've got a brewery.
I'm not surprised at that one.
I make cheese and salamis and all that charcuterie stuff, and mustards, and try and use my hands. Wow. I'm a big Lego freak, so I pretty much every time a Star Wars Lego contraption comes out, I buy that and try and spend time putting together. So yeah, just try and keep myself busy with my hands.
Oh, very good. I guess that's a part of your engineering history as well, somewhere. And that, well, I can't say Star Trek, but Star Wars connection is very much a Spencer family consideration as well. And you mentioned Brett earlier as somebody he's another lovely man in our industry. He's fairly forthright in his opinion, but I have a deep love of the Spencer family, who I've known for a long, long time myself as well. But oh, mate, thanks for that. That's cool. That's great. I just want to ask a couple of things about Finsure, and then we've got a whole lot of questions here to answer from people. So we'll get your opinion on all those questions as we go forward. But I guess to start with, from a Finsure perspective, when you look at the marketplace, do you guys have a specific target or view of the sort of brokers you're looking for when they come to join you, or is it just generally assessing the marketplace and then saying, well, this is a fit for us because it fits our culture or whatever it is? What is it that makes Finsure move around?
Yeah, look, it's a really interesting question, and it's one that the answer would have changed over the years. Obviously, from a business that was the last rather larger organisation, aggregation business to start, we were looking for any type of broker in the early days. But where we are today probably falls back on my gripes with our educational content in the industry, which is, or requirements rather, which is the fact that most brokers require at minimum a Cert 4 to effectively become a registered broker. A Cert 4 doesn't give a broker the necessary skills to run a business, and my concern is in and around the fact that, okay, you might be able to process a loan, but if a broker's forced to deal with two leads and only 2 leads and need to pay a mortgage, then my concern would be that those 2 leads potentially may cause issues. So We look for brokers that understand their business. We look for brokers that have business plans and have foresight in understanding what maybe their 12, 18-month plan, 24-month plan looks like. And really, I guess, identify with those brokers opportunities within our business and how we can help them grow. So we certainly don't look for brokers that are overly new to industry, who don't have a network, who don't understand what they're looking to achieve. Just because it just doesn't work. If broker doesn't want to buy into what we're doing to help them, then it's a waste of time for both parties. So it doesn't have to be an experienced broker, certainly, but just somebody who has a business plan and understands who, or, you know, a girl, a man or woman who wants to commit to the industry is probably what we look for.
It's an interesting point, because I know over the last few years what we've done in the FBAA as far as our face-to-face PD days goes have been heavily focused with running your business style emphasis. Nothing to do with credit and stuff, but it's all about the psychology and the practical applications of running a business, and to be successful as a business person, and just having the credit side and the lending side as being the piece that you're selling as such, or you've got to process. And I was on we had a committee meeting this morning for our mental health group, our mental health committee. And we're just talking about what we're doing in the coming 12 months. And one of the things that came up was that from somebody who's deep involved in the coaching side of the industry, and the feedback they're getting firsthand is there's a real pain point for brokers at the moment, not really understanding how to run their businesses, and therefore they don't do it successfully, therefore they don't make money, and that has a serious impact on their family, their mental health. The whole thing just collapses.
Yeah,
so
and the decisions become poorer because they're forced to make decisions they otherwise wouldn't make.
Yeah, it's really scary. So we're going to do a bit about that at a high level, but be part of our mental health program for 2021, together with a whole host of other things we're doing. But it's interesting because, you know, I think we sometimes forget. I have a very dear mate of mine from my high school time, actually probably goes back a bit before that. He is the world's best craftsman. He's a jeweler. He's the world's most shithouse business person. He's had a couple of businesses collapse on him. No matter how good he is at his craft, if you can't run the business, it ain't going to work. Yeah,
exactly right. No, you're absolutely right. And I think that's a real shortcoming in our industry, and it's not taught. I guess as a deep, a deep set of skills back into that actual knowledge for a broker. It's very much at the top. Most of the education is around transactions, and I think the strategic thinking is lacking. So, yeah, I think it's important, and I think it needs to be addressed. It's something that definitely needs to be addressed within the industry.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I hear comments on cert. I mean, you'd be well aware I'm not the biggest advocate on the diploma. I think it's a bullshit course, really, and it
absolutely.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any more.
Yeah. No. But I think that the reason for the Cert 4s of these world is to create a minimum point of knowledge, and a very minimum point of knowledge. And I don't think it's deep enough either, but it becomes the start point that we as an industry then have to build on it to help people to build on it. So whether it's the business capability, or whether it's a proper understanding of credit workflows and lead generation, whatever it may be, it's up to us to really build on it if you want the quality. And people need to invest in themselves, in my view, and it's just my view. They need to invest in themselves in that knowledge and education to upskill, to make sure that they do live and survive in this industry, because it's not only the financial impact, the impact of families, your mental health, and that's what we're just talking about.
No, I think you're absolutely, and it's all valid. And I think if brokers, talk to an aggregator, it doesn't matter who it is, it doesn't have to be Finsure. The question they need to be asking is not who's on their panel so much, or what their systems look like, but it's how are you helping me understand, educate me, and help me run my business? Because that is the key.
Yeah. And in all fairness, there's being a balanced conversation, such as it's different things for different people, and that's why there's different aggregators for different people. Yeah, it's not a one size fits all sort of thing. And I think we get asked a lot, who should I join as an aggregator? Well, the question really is, you've got to go and research that and see what works for you. What do you want? What do you need? And how does that then translate to the person or the group you're talking to? And I guess that's a good segue, and it wasn't planned, into the question around what is Finsure's uniqueness that attracts brokers, or its value proposition, for the sake of nothing. Is there something that you guys pride yourself on, and that it's sort of an attractive
Absolutely. I think the mantra that I would take away is that there are no perfect aggregators.
Attractive position that you guys hold?
Yeah,
your
sure.
good looks, my friend.
Well, yes. Well, you've thrown me with that. Can you hear me? Pete, I've lost you. Pete, can you hear me?
I've lost connection for some reason with Simon.
You're back.
I can see him, but I can't hear him. Oh, there he is. You're back.
Yep.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there.
No, okay, sorry, you're pixelating. Okay. Yeah. To answer that question, I think it's a really good one. I don't think there's any perfect aggregators, and I think anybody who says that they're perfect in what they do, I think are kidding themselves. So, to answer your question, what we pride ourselves on is being honest, transparent, and true to what we can and can't do. So if we can't do something as a business, we'll say we can't do it. If we can do it, we say we will do it, and we'll endeavour to try our best to ensure that we can deliver on our promises. But being open and transparent and telling or explaining to somebody when something might be a problem before it becomes an issue goes a long way into actually helping people manage those problems in their business, as opposed to not being transparent. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say that really separates us is most of the people in our business have come from running their own business in one capacity or another. So they understand the trials and tribulations of an ATO bill or work cover, or understanding how that actually impacts, as a small business owner, the risks and the stresses you face every night. And that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I agree. It certainly does. And sorry, I'm just changing a setting here. I think I'm getting interference myself at this end. Sorry about that. So yeah, that does. And just an interesting question from my point of view, I guess, more so than anything else. I see within the FBAA membership and with our industry as a whole, the old 80-20 rule doesn't move much. So whenever I look at this game, 80% of business is done by 20% of the brokers, or 20% of the people. And it doesn't matter where you cut that anyway. It always seems to be an 80-20 rule. I look at the FBAA membership. 82% of members are East Coast and the rest are scattered around the country. I look at the weighting of ACLs and ACRs. It's basically 80-20 rule again. And that's ASIC's data. Do you guys find the same thing, or do you have an influence on one side of the country, or?
No, look, it's absolutely true. We have an 80-20 rule where 80% of our business comes from the top 20%. The other component is the East Coast for us is the majority of our business. Absolutely, might even be more than 80%. But certainly, what we've done in our business is we drew a line through our network in as far as identifying what would be considered to be industry standard earnings, both from a settlement and transactional perspective, but also from a financial perspective. And we found that nearly 60%, if not less, if not slightly more, of our business sat below that minimum requirement. Now that might be because brokers operate as part-time brokers, or they have, a primary role as an accountant or financial planner, or they just don't know how to get their business moving. So what we actually ended up doing was putting on a business coach, Rachel, who operates out of the Melbourne office. Actually, his job is solely to take those brokers on a journey to enhance their offering, enhance their business opportunity, to get them into that, not maybe 20% percentile, but certainly into the top 40%, because, people have given up. What I say to people is they've given up their job somewhere in life. They quit their PAYG job to be a broker, to be a self-employed business owner. And it's not fair if they're sitting there, bouncing along the bottom and not knowing what they don't know. So that 80-20 rule is really important for us to really get a split back down to something like a 40-60% of our network. We're not going to get everybody up, but certainly it's something that we look at.
Yeah, like I said at the beginning of this seminar today, that mate, you're a man with a big heart. That a lot of people don't think about the other people, and it's a very self-interest, self-reflecting sort of determinations that are made. That's a very, very cool thing. Mate, good on you for that. Have you guys had to change anything that you do during COVID-19? Some people have, some people haven't. Bar that we've all gone digital in our communication.
Yeah, sure. No, so again, we have always championed, if you like, within the business, a diversification of income and a diversification of customer base for our brokers, and always ensure that our brokers are thinking about, okay, well, if I'm getting a mortgage from person A, what else can I look at to help that customer benefit them financially, and think of themselves as a financial consultant and not a financial mortgage broker. As a result of that, what we find is that most of our brokers actually are identifying with a number of different diversified income channels, either through assets, like, equipment leasing, websites, developing those websites through us to help their customers. As a result, we've actually weathered the last 6 months as a business probably better than we have even last year after the Royal Commission. And that's because a lot of our brokers are actually looking at the environment as an opportunity, more so as crying into their cup of coffee or cup of tea in the morning and saying it's terrible. So, and that's a mindset thing. It's us. I can't praise my sales team and the support team enough. They're always out there talking to brokers. We're doing more Zoom meetings these days with brokers around mental health, about identifying within. One thing, I think they say dentists are the most stressed, profession in the world with the highest suicide rates. I think mortgage brokers might be, not from a suicide perspective, certainly from a mental health perspective, close behind them, because working from home, I did it for 2 months, and I can tell you, it was either me or my wife. It was Lord of the Flies. But a lot of people do that full time, and they have to get up and get motivated to have a shower and go to the room next door to run a business that generates enough income that they can send their kids to school and ultimately pay their mortgages. And I think that's lost on businesses that think all I see you is a transaction. That's all they see. They see a statement and they go, right, Pete, why didn't you settle $4 million this month or $3 million this month or whatever? That's the conversation that seems to be happening. And I think it's completely on its head. It needs to be the other way around. And as a result of that, we've found that our network has increased, our brokers' recruitment has increased, and our settlements have increased.
Mate, this is such a truism throughout the industry at the moment. We did a seminar, I think it was a week and a half ago now, with Tom Panos. So he's the real estate guy. He's a bit of a rah-rah guy. I'm getting a bit old. I don't know if I need the rah-rah.
No, I know Tom.
But, but he's a great man. We had a huge audience for that. But his conversations were so, and always are, bang on. And one of the people who put up a comment throughout the session said, when COVID-19 started, I rang and got in contact with all of my existing clients and then worked on my database for no other reason, just to say hello and how you going. There was no pitch for product, no pitch for a loan, just to see how they were. And he said, today, I haven't been so busy as I am now as over the last 2 years. He is just flat out. And this is a common thing. And back to your piece, we talk about, people get up in the morning, they're sort of crying in their tea in the morning. But the reality is, if you're doing nothing, that's what happens. You're getting nothing. Those that are doing things, which is the vast majority, are actually nailing it, which is why our industry is surviving really, really well. And I've been speaking with various federal ministers over the past 3 months. I've had a bit like, with all the Zoom meetings and stuff going on, the interaction with government and the opposition is far higher than what it is normally. Sure. It's so much easier. But just talking to them and looking at small business issues and so on, the amount of people that are not doing well, our industry needs to be very, very proud of itself as to how well it's managed this, and doing things to help people out. It's actually created an enormous, not just, I was going to say goodwill, but this is just where our industry's at. But I think at times people don't see it, and now it's extremely visible. So it's a really, really great thing.
Look, I think to that point though, Pete, I will say this, which is we are in the eye of the hurricane as it stands today, right? I'm very, very strong in my opinion in this. We've suffered, from a economic perspective and a social perspective. Obviously, the last 4 months have been ferocious, and we're starting to ease these restrictions. And there's a notion in the industry and there's a notion in the community that, okay, we're getting back to normal, right? But we've got a cliff that I think we're going to fast approach in September, which is going to have a dramatic impact on our business and our industry. So this goes back to my point before, which is, we need to stop thinking as a business, as an industry, as transactions, as numbers, and think about strategically what that means for me and my business, my mental health, because people will start to think, brokers will start to think, hey, this is really easy. I'm working through COVID. There's all these people losing their jobs, but I've had this huge refinance opportunity, and the banks have supported that with cashback opportunities. But come September, when JobKeeper finishes and all these people end up possibly losing their jobs and businesses and going to administration, then brokers will think, well, hang on a minute, what happened the last 6 months of my life? I didn't think about what's going to happen for the next 6 months. So I think that's, as an industry, we have an obligation as business leaders in this industry to educate and take these people like this on this journey to ensure that they're prepared for it.
Bang on, because the third quarter as you say, when September hits and job seeker, whatever it finishes, there's a problem there. And again, a recent conversation I'm having with somebody else is that brokers today really need to be in a high level communication with their clients for all the right reasons. But if they are on a government stimulus and that finishes in September, if they've no longer got a job or they've got nothing, so they fall off that cliff, as you'd say, trying to save them at that point in time is mission impossible. You need to be talking to them now to restructure things to make sure that it's something that's going to be suitable for them to be able to manage as they go forward. Because if you don't, it'll get to a certain point in a couple of months' time, you can't do anything, and MIPs will go through the roof.
Let me share a story with you. When COVID started, we commenced a program where we were surveying 45 of effectively our busiest brokers in the network across the entire country. It covered every state, and it covered about 8,500 customers in total. And the questions we asked were, are your inquiries the same level as pre-COVID or 2 weeks? We ran it fortnightly, so was it pre-COVID at the time? If not, what's the percentage drop? The same question for applications, settlements, and declines. And what we found was initially there was no impact. Then a fortnight to a month into COVID, in around, I would say, into March, there was a huge amount of panic, and we saw 30% drop off in applications, and slowly but surely that then moved through into May to about a 10% drop off in settlements and a 14% increase in declines as the lenders started to obviously ask more questions and adjust their policy on the fly, which they do so well. And what we're finding now is that we're probably, from an inquiries perspective, just below where we were pre-COVID, but it's starting to dip again. And our settlements are now probably 10%, or our unconditionals are 10% where they were previously down. So what that simply means is that we've ridden this wave coming into COVID. We're getting over that hump, but inquiries will start to sort of be affected as a result. Settlements will be affected, and that's what we need to be prepared for. And I think we need to really start thinking about, business, even the BDMs on the floor and around the country for their own businesses have to ask questions. Well, what does your plan look like? How are you talking to your customers? How are you engaging your customers? Are you using technology to do that? A phone. I've never found a better medium than a phone. Phone seems to me, it's obviously if you've got a lot, it's a lot of work, but they're the questions, because thinking that everything's going to be hunky-dory, let's go, I think there's going to be a shock. And I've still got my money on a look out for Christmas with a second wave. So, that's...
we can debate that other piece a little another time maybe, but that point you just made about there's nothing like a phone, look, I couldn't agree more. Even if you've got a lot of customers and it takes a while and it's a bit labor intensive, the personal connection that creates, I think, is unlike anything else. And it goes a million miles compared to an email in my books, especially in these times where you need the dynamic of that conversation to be more personal, because the first thing that's most important is how are you going? It's not what you're ready to buy another car, or you're going to buy an investment property, or you want to refinance. That's another conversation. No, it's all about you as in the client and how they are, and it may then feed off to other things. And I do agree that the latter part of this year will become challenging. And the things got to watch out for is what the unemployment rates look like, which is why the states are trying to push the states to open sooner than later. And whilst we're talking, mate, I'm getting bombed with questions, so I'll start to come to some of the questions that are coming in a sec rather than our general chat. But yeah, it will be challenging, but with any period in time, and I've lost count of the amount of recessions I've been through over my 42 years in this game, the GFC, all of that stuff, there is always opportunity if you're prepared to look for it. And you got to have the nous to look for it too. So I mean, if you don't know what you're looking for, you'll find nothing. But these times always have opportunity somewhere. And yes, the size of the market may contract because there's a much higher rate of unemployment. So it doesn't matter what you do, people can't get a loan because they can't afford it. No one's prepared to, in the consumer sector, to look at an asset lend for 6 months maybe, or whatever it is. The government may come in with some more stimulus though. I know I had a meeting with a very senior federal minister 3, if not 5 weeks ago. It was in the recent past, and I mentioned what happens, exactly this point. What happens when we get to September and it's still shit? The borders aren't open. The economy's up the duff, and bloody unemployment rates are just climbing a ceiling. What happens then? Is there a plan B? Forget plan B. Is there a C and D? Is there more money in the ticker? And the question came back very resounding. Yes, there is. So, as much as bullish as the government is about getting everything going, there are still secondary plans behind the scene, and we're seeing a little bit of it still coming out on the media at the moment. But I would dare say that if something goes really bad in that latter, that September mark and onwards, the government will come out with greater support. Whether that helps people so much, I don't know what your views are on the 25 grand grant for construction and renos and stuff,
But Pete, I think the thing that we're missing possibly in the conversation at the moment is more the fact about the lender response to a potential risk. And what lenders do very well is move before a risk is realised, which is what they need to do. I mean, they're APRA regulated, well, the banks are, but certainly they have to move and protect their interests. And as a result of that, what will happen is you will find policy and procedure, credit will change to accommodate what they perceive to be the problem before the problem hits. And if you're not prepared for that, what you're going to find is that you're going to end up with, as a broker, 10 deals on your desk, but nowhere to send them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because it's too late, as we were saying before. And it'll be an interesting piece to see what happens, because technically at the moment, people who are on stimulus are not in arrears, right? So they're not sitting as a default, but
hardship.
Hardship. Yeah, they're not on. But they're not treated as being in arrears because they're on, say, a payment holiday, right? Because it's not in that banking system process. But come September, and if you can't make the next payment as due,
go up. Remember, it's going to go up, right? Because they're going to capitalise the interest.
Hopefully some will sort of push out the loan term to make up for it, so without pushing payments up. But regardless, I know. But regardless, there's this cliff, as you say, in September that you may not come off the other side of it. Hopefully there's some wings sitting in the background that will help us to catch that. But you're right, because lenders will move in front.
They will,
because of their APRA requirements and obligations.
And look, we've had a conversation with ASIC. Julian Wills, my compliance manager, and I were on the phone with them maybe a month ago now, expressing our concerns around exactly that, which is a hardship program which is effectively instigated by the client but supported by a broker. Then you get to the end of this hardship program 6 months later in September, and you find that the customer is now in a position where their repayments are higher because by virtue of the fact it's not a holiday, it's a deferral. Potentially you have a 5 to 10% drop in property prices, maybe, potentially. Then the customer says, my house is not worth as much as it was and I'm paying more. I'm going to hold Mr. Broker liable, Mrs. Broker liable, and guess what? I'm going to call AFCA up. And so my biggest concern at the moment is this vicious cycle of where does a broker sit with their rights, her or his rights, in helping support a client in such a dire circumstance. However, that will impact their asset position later. And I think that's a really interesting question that nobody knows the answer to yet. Because ASIC sure.
And I'll just pitch this in a part of the conversation. We have a very transparently open door to the chair and the CEO of AFCA, which if we need to have deep conversations around all of this for a protective measure for industry, because it's not anyone in the industry's fault for COVID-19, which is the fallout impact of all this. So we need to make sure that's appropriately captured. So it's something that, as a separate thing, let's make sure we have those conversations right up high so that it's well captured before we get there. Hey, I better do the right thing, get on some of these questions. I'm enjoying the conversations here, mate. One of the questions we've been asked is, has the industry approached the banks to proportion clawbacks directly proportionally to the number of days short of 2 year period? So I guess you're saying that you got a maximum of up to 2 years clawback for clawback for 2 years. Does the percentage come down as you get closer to the end of 2 years? Now, I don't know from a aggregator lender perspective, is there a proportionate drop, or have there been discussions to look at that?
There is on the basis of a 12-month and then the first 12-month and the final 12-month period, obviously, which are 150% proportioning. But there's been no conversation at any point at our level with the heads of third parties or banks, lenders, that for that matter, around a further apportioning of effectively time to run. So I guess as I understand the question to be that if it was 8 months to go, instead of being 50%, it would be 8 of 24, whatever that percentage is, which would be No, that conversation hasn't been had or even discussed. It's never come across my desk. At the moment,
I know
it's a 50 and 100%.
Yeah, I know with my discussions at a federal government level, I'm still completely against clawbacks. I think there's very few people in this world that wouldn't know that. And that doesn't go, if you breach your agreement, if you commit fraud, you own the baseball bat across the back of the head. You own that. That's not what we're talking about. But this is all about if you've done nothing wrong and a life event happens, you did your job. You're entitled to get paid for a job. And there's a whole host of arguments. I usually babble on about that, but I took it to the federal government multiple times, especially through the best interest duty, because I believe there's a real issue with the interplay of best interest duty and on that piece. And the government basically said, bugger off, and we're not talking about it. Thanks, be lucky it's not 10 or 15 years clawback. And I said, well, who the hell does that? I said, there's industries that do. So I'm in the process of conducting a research piece for an independent house to drill out who are these places, if they exist, and I don't believe they exist. I think it was a push away comment. What are the sectors like? Not just in our industry. I know what our industry is like with clawbacks. What other industries have clawback, whether they be in financial services or not? I have the global piece, because I did that some years ago, and through the interactions with the IMBF, the International Federation I chair, we're actually restructuring that. We again had a meeting this week. And there's various needs in Ireland and Canada at the moment on reviews of commissions like we've been through. So we're going to refresh all that data as well and go back and say, here's the data. Where? Let's make this thing fair. Maybe first 12 months, there's you could lose 100% maybe, but after 12 months, bugger off. I did my job.
It's a double-edged sword, because I understand. I understand why they want to look at it, but I also don't agree with that, because if a broker has performed the job and done the work, you should be paid for that. It's
bingo.
And
all the expenses you've had as a business person to get that happen, nobody gives you that back. There's no refund on your expenses. We could probably have that one as a separate hour discussion and then run out over a bit. All right. Yeah, we've had one of those, one or two of those in the past. Mark, another question here. We're not going to have the answers. It's the benefits of the FBAA compared to the MFAA. That's probably not a question you and I should have a discussion around. I'm naturally biased. If you want to be on the dark side, you go to the dark side. It's going to be your problem. And I do say that in jest. Look, it's all about choice and the right to people to have choice. So you have a look and choose that. But if you want more information, the person that asked that question, speak to one of our state presidents. They're all around the country, or one of our state managers. We've got one East Coast and West Coast, Leah and Mark. Have a chat to them. They'll be able to answer that for you very, very succinctly. I've got another question here that's come through, and I'm tentative to ask this. So if you want to walk away from it, I'm not going to deep dive this one, but whether there's a high level comment to be made or not, I've always said when I started Q&A with Whitey, everything was on the table to be asked. You may not like the answers, you may not agree with the answers, but I wasn't going to shy away from conversations. This maybe one is where we say we're not going to have the conversation. But the question was to Pete and Simon, do you expect any change or impact to the broker community that AFG and Connective merger, has basically been okayed by the ACCC today?
Look, you're happy for me? I'm happy to answer that. I'm on a very opinionated view, so I've got opinions on everything. I think there will be an impact, and I think the impact will be that brokers will need to make a decision as to whether they want to be treated as a number or they want to be treated as a person. And I think the problem with a large group of any nature, doesn't matter what industry you're in, where you've got members in excess of 40% of the industry, by the very virtue of the size, you cannot have that hands-on personal approach. Now, there's businesses out there that are completely self-sufficient and they have nobody come and see them from their aggregator, and that's fine, and that might suit them. That's no issues at all. But businesses will need to reflect. As I said earlier at the very beginning, I would recommend this. Anybody in that family at the moment would write a business plan, a strategic business plan for the next 12 to 24 months, identify what's important to them, to make them successful, both from a transactional industry perspective, but also from a soft skill perspective, understanding maybe where their weaknesses are around addressing credit, compliance, engaging customers, identifying new referrers, cold calling, whatever that might be, and then determine whether or not through a matrix, if you like, if I'm an engineer, whether or not that group, given the size, or any group for that matter, satisfies those needs. And if it's a no, then you need to make a decision with your feet.
And if it's a yes, it's a yes. So yeah,
exactly right.
Yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, I guess it's a balanced perspective of the world. It's going to work for some, it's not going to work for others, it is what it is. And
we can't throw our tools out of the pram, Pete. We just got to get on with life, and there's opportunity everywhere you turn. So.
Yeah, that's right. And we said about what would happen in September and so on. There's always opportunity. Same thing here. There's always opportunities. There's choice. People have the right of choice. But I think also, and it's something I talk on my PD days that I run, or if I'm being asked to speak at somebody's PD day independently, is that you should always be aware of what's going on around you, but be focused on your journey. Right? I always say, I'll deal with the shit that's going around in the circle. So we deal with the regulatory piece, the politicians, leave that with us. Don't get distracted with it. Focus on your journey to whatever path that takes becomes critically the most important thing. Because I always say, when I was a kid, I did my private pilot's license before I could drive a car. I always expected to be a commercial pilot. And then I had a back injury and a fusion done, all that sort of shit. It just didn't go that way. But that was going to be my job. I never expected to be here today. And you've got to allow, oh, well, look, you're mechanical engineers, but you've got to allow the journey to evolve and just take it, let it go where it takes you.
Yeah, look, I think the one phrase I use, and everybody who works with me would know this, is it's our job in the industry to provide the facts, right? And it's the job of the broker or anybody in the industry to ask questions, right? That's their job. It's not the other way around. It's us. And then it's the job of a broker to make an educated decision that best suits their needs based on those facts. And those to be asked to ensure that you have the facts. And as you said, option A might be the one that you're after, option B. And not everybody drives a sports car. They might drive the SUV, or they might drive, ride a motorbike. So it just really depends on what your needs are in the industry. But don't get caught up in the groundswell of all this hoopla, because it may not suit you.
Yeah. And it becomes an unnecessary distraction.
Right.
Keep focused on where you're going on your journey.
You made a really good point. And I'll sorry, just to sort of close this point out, you made a very good point, which I just want to harp on a little bit, is you focus on the regulatory piece, and and your comment was, don't worry about that. That's our job. That's why you pay us a membership fee, and that's what we go to war. We put our helmet on and we go and bash the heads of APRA and ASIC and all the rest of them, federal ministers. That's the same with any of these aggregator groups, in that the compliance piece, you need to identify that there's somebody in that business that takes care of that for you. Because if you have to get up as a broker and worry about where your next referral is coming from, how you're lodging your next deal, what your compliance obligations are and the framework that you operate under, you're going to go mad.
Yeah. You guys have done something pretty unique in that area, haven't you, in that compliance sphere?
Yeah, so we've actually rolled out probably well, we consider it to be a market-leading framework, which actually looks at compliance as a business enabler, not a big stick that comes in over the back to adjust behaviours. So a lot of the things we have in place, we have a high degree of audits. The audits provide broker scorecards and behavioural outcomes, which then lead into educational outcomes, which allow brokers to adjust their behaviour to ensure that they can go to bed every night and sleep. Absolutely. Whereas most people, when compliance calls, who would you rather, the ATO or compliance? Most people would say probably the ATO.
So, you don't want ASIC banging on your door.
So the compliance is very, very much a four-letter word in the industry, but we've turned it on its head to be very much part of the business decision-making process for brokers.
Smart move. Hey, I think we've partially answered this, but one of the questions we've got is, will lenders continue to pay trail commissions on loans that remain in hardship after the 30th of September? I think the answer to that is, if it's still under a stimulus package, the answer is yes, but once it goes into an arrears default situation, it'll be no. It's a matter of depending on. Would that be fair, you think?
That's 100%. And brokers would need to, if for some reason the stimulate or the hardship program does expire in September, brokers would need to work with their customers to work with lenders for extending that hardship. It has to be an extension of the hardship program not a decision not to pay. Because as soon as it's a decision not to pay, it's going to affect, obviously, not only trail, but it's going to affect everything.
Yeah, it goes down the toilet. Hey, here's a tricky one for you. What do you feel a safe LVR would be to support a new loan or refinance post-COVID-19? Here,
Right,
get that crystal ball warmed up, brother.
All right, I'll answer that question by saying that at any point in my career, I would have said an 80% lend is a safe LVR. If you don't need to go to any of the LMIs and it doesn't have to be assessed twice, you're in good territory. And I would stick to that as best you can.
All right. Okay, so the consistency of past positioning on that, 80% LVR is safe, gets it out of LMI's hand. It's purely a balance sheet decision then in principle, unless, of course, you're securitizing your asset book.
Well, that's right. But even then, lenders will make a decision on 80 that will be commercially minded, as opposed to, in a lot of times, credit risk weighted, which is ultimately back on with GE or Genworth. Genworth or QBE. Not everybody can afford a 20% deposit or a 20, an 80% lend. So I understand that. But to answer that question in the most basic fashion, I would say 80%.
Yeah, that's right. Otherwise, it's where it's ever going to fall, I suppose. And the complexities with that's going to be is what you may think the LVR may not wind up being if property values pull back. You're going to be dealt with that challenge as well as potentially capitalised interest and from a stimulus package on the way through.
No, that's exactly right. Absolutely right.
Yeah. I think some of those stimulus packages have got, I was going to say whiskers on it, mate, but we're both having a crack at that at the moment. Like that $25,000 grant for renos and construction, as is the $250,000 SME potential loan. They both, to me, don't hit the mark. And I've got a meeting tomorrow with the Shadow Treasurer, Dr. Jim Chalmers, who I've known for quite some time. Jim used to be the Shadow Financial Services Minister. So we've got a fair bit of history, but we're going to talk a little bit around this tomorrow. But the challenge to me is that, for the SME market, what a lot of people want to do is to restructure existing debt, not take on more debt, right? And the stimulus package is you can't refinance with it. You're taking on more debt. So you sort of go, you kind of, but didn't work. And then with this latest stimulus in the building sector,
150 grand spend before you get access to the cash, isn't it?
That's a bloody big reno day one at 150 before you get 25. If I'm spending 150, I probably don't need the 25.
Right. No, absolutely.
I really wish these politicians would, before they release these things, is talk to industry sectors, say, does this practically work? I understand the motive for it, and they're all great motives, and they're all done for the right reasons. Yeah. But if they constantly miss the mark, you're sort of going, guys, if all you did was this, then it would have been much better. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's an argument that's been made many times over the years, rather, where people are making decisions who have never spent time in the trenches, as I say. It doesn't matter if it's people using IT platforms for brokers, and it's boffins in an ivory tower who've never written a loan in their life, or federal politicians who, their private banker wrote the loan for them. So.
Yeah. I hear you. I remember, it's funny, it takes me back to about, would have been 2009 sort of year up, just before we're getting towards the end of the NCCP. So I sat on industry consultation with Treasury for that. And I was at a meeting and Minister was about to come in, and they're discussing about how things pieced into the transactional model. And I've been, as I said, been in this game 42 years. I've been lending forever, run multiple brokerages and blah, blah, blah. And they're talking about this process, and I said, stop. And there's about 30 people said, put your hand up here, anyone who's ever written a home loan. So I put my hand up, and no one, absolute zip.
Yeah,
right?
That's it.
So that's it. Okay, well, what about a car loan? Put my hand up. A personal loan. No one had ever written a loan in their damn life. Yet they're trying to tell everybody else, this is how it's done. Bugger off.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Fun. No. Yeah, it happens everywhere. Hey, a important question. Are you seeing any issues or challenges in dealing with lenders at the moment? We've had people come to us saying, I put a loan in, it takes 40 days to get picked up, and then all of a sudden credit policies changed, and my client's got the shits. Because we started here, it took them so long to get going, and then they've lifted or changed the benchmark again. Are you seeing anything of that? And if so, you've been dealing with it?
As I said, we've seen about a 14%, statistically a 14% increase in declines, and the combination of, in my opinion, a false economy through refinances, which has blown. So to give us in context rather, Finsure's had its best 3 months in lodgements, in excess of nearly $15 billion over 3 months in lodgements, and those lodgements are primarily refinances. So what happens is those refinances effectively go in and then blow out all these times for credit to pick up the deal. You look at an ANZ, which is up to 30 days, because there's a cashback as well attached to it. Because we're working in a market that at the moment is so much in flux. I mean, you had New Zealand, was it yesterday, have an issue where they had 2 additional COVID cases. We've got 3 schools in Melbourne. There's potentially concern around the JobKeeper and job seeker piece. So the banks, and having worked with B&K, which is part of our business, are needing to make decisions quickly. If you've got a 30-day lag time before it's picked up, then those decisions are made probably every 5 to 7 days, particularly around liquidity and the issues that banks face. So yeah, you are going to face problems where the internal business, where you would be outside or inside, sorry, as an application processing time frame, inside the decision process, you're now outside it. So decisions are made inside while the application's been sitting on a pile, being ready to pick up. So when they do pick it up, it doesn't necessarily reflect what was put in. So we are seeing that. We are seeing that. And to answer the question on maybe how to overcome it, the real answer is go back to your bare basics, which is do not sell on price, do not sell on the transaction, because ultimately what that means is you will go in with the masses and you'll be there for 30, 40 days and you'll suffer the same fate as everybody else. Look for the reason why somebody wants a loan, and it will be ultimately, not always, but mostly time to market or time to settle, or there'll be an objective rather that is outside of price. Pick a lender that satisfies that and do the research beforehand, because there are small lenders like Bank of Sydney, I'm just throwing a few around here, ME Bank and some of those smaller types, maybe Macquarie now back in the market, who will pick that deal up and run with it with a complete transparency around their credit policy from start to finish. But what you're finding is brokers are chasing and customers are chasing these 2.9 refi rates and are getting thrown into the mix with everybody else. And unfortunately, you come out 40 days later. I mean, you can't keep milk on the shelf for 40 days and expect to drink it. How can you put an application and expect it to be the same?
Great advice. Great advice. I agree. Look, and I'm getting more questions coming through this. Here's one that says, given that there is an increase compliance and administrative requirements post the Royal Commission's findings and recommendations, which need a lot of time to work through and process, are single person mortgage broking businesses or small broking firms still viable business proposition, or will they be consolidating to larger broking firms? And I guess this comes back to, and I'm going to throw this as a general, the support you get from your aggregator. Look, as whether or not the small man survives or not.
I would disagree. I would agree with you, but I would say before that comment would be made, I would say it all depends on the plan, the business plan that an individual broker has, right? So if you're an operator and you operate by yourself, who's your target market, who are your target referrals, where are you getting your business from? Does that mean you work from home? Do you open an office? Do you have an online presence? Do you operate through a deal processing service like Finsure has, which is BSS, or do you process the deals yourself? All these questions need to be asked. I think at the end of the day that the key to a successful broker is diversification, right? The days of transferring a client on a single process, on a single mortgage, are gone. And so where these questions come from in my mind is that a lot of these more sophisticated brokerage firms, and we've got them in our network, have varying degrees of service that they can offer to their clients. That doesn't mean that you have to own those services. You just have to have strategic partnerships to refer them out. And if you do that, and it's an accountant or a financial planner, or a property person or an insurer, it doesn't really matter. They don't have to sit in your office. And the aggregator can help you with those decisions. It's having those strategic relationships in place and understanding what does tomorrow look like for you. You know, if you're going to, like I say, I know that I'm probably eating into some of this question time, but the biggest faux pas in this industry is volume. Everybody commits to volume. Volume means nothing, right? If I say to you, Pete, write $2 million a month, most people would say, what does that mean? Does that mean do I have to talk to 10 people, 5 people, 1 person? What does that mean? But we reward all brokers on volume. We pat everybody on the back on volume. And the outcome of that is that there's no customer outcome on volume. It comes back to one question, which is how many people do you need to talk to see, to transact with, to get to a number that makes sense for you to run a business. Go back to that bare basic, and I think any single operator can be as successful as a large organisation.
Yeah, great point, great point. And I was Mark Boris's first CEO back in the Wizard days before Yellow Brick Road existed. And Mark always used to say, you've got to create your own luck. It wasn't about tossing a coin, it was about getting out there and crunching the numbers, doing the business and working it and make sure it comes through.
Understanding your business, understanding if you need $2 million in settlements to pay your mortgages and your bills and send your kids to private school, argument's sake, pay for the Porsche, then what does that mean? I need to talk to 20 people, 15 people, 100 people. I can't answer that, but that's what has to be asked. And everybody gets the other way around, which is just diabolically silly. I don't get it. Yeah,
I hear. Hey, no questions just come through. Is will we ever see a return to LMI be paid back to clients if they lose their homes during COVID-related repossessions? I don't think we've seen a start to that. So, but have you ever seen? We'll put it this way: LMI has a position that should be repaid if the loan is terminated early. And I think from memory, it's within the first 2 years. It's within their credit policy. But a lot of the LMI providers say, well, we don't pay commissions out to anybody. There's nothing to return. And my argument's always been, you call it insurance. If I terminate my car insurance early, I get something back. It might be small, but I get something back. And there is a position that sits with that LMI doing that. But it will be interesting to see if people. I would say the answer to this question is it's not going to happen. If people lose their homes post-COVID and it's sold up, there's not going to be any rebate on their LMI. I can't see that happening.
No.
I don't necessarily agree with it, but that's my gut. It says it ain't going to work.
I would say that policy is not in place today. And if people are selling their homes up, people are getting their homes sold up, there are going to be losses incurred, both on balance sheet through lenders, through insurance. They're not about to go and start giving money out. I can tell you that for free.
Yeah. And I'm almost out of time here, but we'll sneak this one in. Have you seen brokers charging fees or a mandate to process loans?
No. I mean, you see a mandate for the service, and if you're smart enough, the service will include not only the cost of sales and everything else you do, including processing, but I've never seen it identified as a processing fee. No.
But there are people mandating service fees or something like that.
I don't think they're wrong with that either, because it certainly protects the broker from, potentially in the future a position where
clawback.
Commission or clawback are affected. So, but it has to be fair and reasonable. Yeah,
I think that's an important thing. You can't get too creatively expensive with these sort of things, and our regulators will not look favourably on it. We already know that through the outcomes of the Royal Commission and part of best interest duty and the remuneration review is that you can't pass a clawback back to a client. So passing fees back has a negativity attached to it day one. So if you're going to do, you need to work within the boundaries of fairness and the law, of course, at all times.
And get advice from everyone. I mean, there's plenty of people in that group, commission, compliance and otherwise, that will give brokers advice on how to structure those types of queries.
Mate, as a wrap, you got any words of advice or a tip for everyone that's watching? Because you're a crowd puller, my friend. There's a lot of people watching us today. Any tips and words of advice?
My advice would be, and it goes back to before, which is we are in the eye of a hurricane at the moment, and I think it's immature for us as an industry and as brokers, individuals, to assume we're over the worst of it. If you haven't done it yet, write a plan for the next 12 months and identify within your business how you're going to support yourself. If you lose 25% of your business, and get as much help from people around you, like the likes of the FBAA contacts, or your aggregator contacts, or your friends, your colleagues, and have that peer review that document. That's the one thing.
That was FBAA contacts, wasn't
it? FBAA. What did I say?
Yeah. Oh, you might have had a Freudian slip on that. That's all right.
No, I apologise. It was FBAA.
Yeah, FBAA. Yeah. We're the good side.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. You know what? This is all about choice and balance. I really don't. When we talk about industry associations, I'm not out to take market share. I just want balance. I want people to have opportunity.
I think I said industry association. You might have to play back the recording.
No, that's all right. It's history now. I can always edit it. We don't do that. That's all right. It is what it is. Hey, mate, I've got to call it quits. Thank you so much. I was always looking forward to this conversation. It's been wonderful this past hour to spend with you. I'll look forward to catching up face to face for that beer that you owe me, or I owe you, whichever way around it is.
I owe you.
But mate, yeah, take care. Have a great rest of the week and month, and as we close off for end of financial year. And again, thank you, and I look forward to catching up as soon as the borders allow.
Appreciate it, mate. Me too. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
What a wonderful man. I love talking to Simon, and there's so much to learn from him, such a wealth of experience, and just a genuine guy. And that's what this platform's all about. It's not really about brands. I know we've got to have a bit of that conversation, but it's about the people. So that's been great. Well, let's call it a wrap. And as we move forward, next week, we have a group of people who are all alternative lenders in the marketplace. And I thought it was important that we have a conversation with this category of lender, if you like, to understand where they're at today and what they're doing. So we've got 86400, Society One, Mortgage Easy, Heartlands, and did I say Society One? Yeah, Speedy Finance, that's the other one in there. We're just gonna have a chat about how they're going, what they're doing, because you know what, you've got to look outside the box. And there's some great things going on in this marketplace. So we're just gonna have a chat to these people, get the good oil from them, and that'll be next week, Thursday, 11:30. Make sure you register. It's going to be a very, very interesting conversation in the marketplace. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to our sponsors for their support once again. As I said, without them, we can't do these things, or we can't do them free. And I want to do everything free, and I want to open to everyone. So thank you for their ongoing support. And don't forget, after this, you're going to get an email. It's going to give you a code for your CPD points, as well as a short survey. Really appreciate if you complete that survey. It helps us to understand whether or not we're hitting the mark for you or not, or if there's other content you want to hear from. So anyhow, thanks for today. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll look forward to seeing you again next Thursday, 11:30 for Q&A with Whitey. Take care, and we'll see you then. Bye.